This is the third talk in the summer series of 6, based around the beautiful Philippa Hanna song, You Still Reign and You're Still God. Week 1, Dan spoke on foundations. What are ours, and do they stand in times of storm? Last week, Steve's message addressed the question of hope surviving amidst disappointment and hard questions. And today, I'm speaking on this stanza. Though I can't see what's before me, I know that I can trust your heart, and this one truth will be my story. You still reign, and you're still God. When I can't see what's before me, you still reign, and you're still God. So the theme then is trust. Our security in God when we can't see the end of the story. Pre-Google, we used to use books called dictionaries, which gave us spellings and meanings of words, often put in a sentence, so that we could understand the meaning in context. In my old Oxford Dictionary of 1964 edition, I found this definition. Trust, a firm belief in the honesty, veracity, justice, strength, etc. of a person or thing. The example being given, our trust is in God. I googled the meaning of the word this week and found from a much later edition, trust, assured reliance on the character, ability, strength or truth of someone or something. One in whom confidence is placed, future or contingent hope. God doesn't get a mention, although all those things apply to him. How our society has changed. One of my very favourite Bible verses is Proverbs 3 verse 5, which states, Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Well, easy to say, but maybe not quite so easy to apply in our daily lives. Throughout the Bible, both in the Old Testament and the New, people have put their trust in God and acted in obedience to him. A lovely story I'd like to use to illustrate trust is that of Ruth. You might be familiar with this Old Testament book, which relates the beautiful story, only 4 chapters long, but with a huge impact. Let's have a quick look at it together and see where trust comes in when the way forward is unknown and how that trust was rewarded. Come with me now to the turbulent time when the judges ruled Israel, and a time of famine. To escape starvation, a man called Elimelech, along with his wife Naomi and 2 sons, went to Moab. It was a long journey, over 50 miles, perhaps about 7 to 10 days of travelling. It was a pagan nation, worshippers of Baal. We read that whilst they were living there, Elimelech died, and Naomi was being cared for by her 2 sons who'd married Moabite women. Sadly, the 2 sons died as well, and 3 grieving women decided to travel to Judah as the famine there had ended. Well, for Naomi this was home, but not so for her 2 daughters-in-law, although they decided to go with her. What loyalty to a mother-in-law to leave their homeland and presumably families to care for her. Well, they set off travelling together, and during the journey Naomi persuades Orpah, one of her daughters-in-law, to leave her and return to Moab. But not so Ruth. I'm amazed at Ruth's willingness to leave her future in God's hands in order to support Naomi. Ruth chapter 1 verse 16 to 18 gives us Ruth's response to Naomi's request to leave her. Ruth replies in this way, Don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me. It seems that Ruth has everything to lose here, but clearly she also trusts her mother-in-law, and moreover, her God. She's seen how Naomi has sustained her faith despite living in a pagan country, and Ruth has learned about the God she worships. They arrive back in Judah. People clearly recognise Naomi, but see a changed woman. She's become sorrowful and bitter. And Ruth has a huge responsibility to care for her and provide for them both. At the time of their return, the barley harvest is just beginning, and Naomi trusts God's provisional laws which allows gleaning, and sends Ruth to glean, which is to collect the stalks at the sides of the fields. And she does so in the fields of a godly man called Boaz. Oh, he's a lovely boss. He treats his workers well. Chapter 2, verse 4 said, he greeted his harvesters, "The Lord be with you." "The Lord bless you," they called back. How lovely to be greeted at work in that way. I've worked with quite a few head teachers, none of whom have offered me that greeting. He speaks to Ruth, recognises her loyalty and trust in Naomi and also in God. He's kind and he helps her, asking his workers to leave some stalks of grain for her. Later, Naomi recognises Boaz as a kinsman redeemer. Very simply, God established an Old Testament law where the nearest male relative would redeem, help really, a person related to them from trouble, danger or need. They would, if possible, marry the widow and thereby produce an heir for the deceased relative. Well, the barley harvest is in, and Naomi instructs Ruth to prepare herself to look her best and go to the threshing room where the grain was stored and where Boaz is sleeping to guard the harvested grain. She's instructed to lie at his feet and uncover them. What? Ruth shows huge trust again, both in Naomi's instruction and in God, as she was putting herself in some danger. She didn't know what lay ahead. Thankfully, the story ends well. Boaz awakens to find a young lady at his feet. Maybe he thought it was his birthday, but he respects her, helps her to leave unseen, and so protects her reputation. He's heard about her and how she's cared for Naomi, leaving her country and family, and because of this, he recognises that she has put her trust in God. Ruth chapter 2 verse 12 says, "May the Lord repay you for what you've done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you've taken refuge," says Boaz. Well, if you read the end of the story in chapter 4, there is a bit of a cliffhanger. Boaz wishes to be the kinsman redeemer for Naomi and Ruth. Oh, but there's found to be a closer male relative who thankfully chooses not to take responsibility for Ruth, leaving the way open for Boaz to marry her, and he accepts that role gladly. Ruth and he have a son called Obed, who was the father of Jesse, the father of David, the line of Jesus. Naomi is invited to help care for the boy, and her bitterness turns to rejoicing. God was so in this equation. There are just so many coincidences, or God incidences, in this story, and Ruth's trust was certainly rewarded. When she set out to help her mother-in-law, she had no idea how her selfless decision would end, but she trusted God when she couldn't see. I've come to realise that learning to trust God is a lifelong process. I think it's true of all relationships involving trust. When you begin a friendship, you wouldn't reveal your heart and tell that friend sensitive things about yourself immediately. This comes with trust. Trust a friend with small things, and then, as that friendship grows and deepens, and they're found to be trustworthy, you can open your heart and yourself, warts and all, to them, and that trust grows. You believe what they say and have confidence that they will do as they say. Similarly, when we turn to Jesus as new Christians and begin our journey with him, we grow to trust him. Can you all remember how this happened for you? Perhaps you've been a Christian for some years, or maybe you're just starting out with God. I have to smile when I think back to my early prayers and walk with God. "Hey, God found me a parking space today," I would say excitedly. and as daft as it sounds, that sort of prayer built up early confidence and trust. I see trusting God as having confidence in him, relying on him with my life and those of my loved ones, in all situations and circumstances. But how did that trust grow? Well, it grew as I learned more about Jesus and his teaching. By reading the Bible, especially the New Testament, and I began with the Gospels. I learned about his character and actions, which were all good and all trustworthy. I found out that he loved me, was good, and had the power and desire to help me, and I began to recognise his voice. It was a fledgling friendship with God, which has grown over many years now. In those early days, I read my Bible, read testimonies of other Christians, attended Bible studies, always eager to know more about Jesus. I tried to recognise his voice. Never audible, as I know some people have heard it, but he has spoken to me through his word, where suddenly a passage seems totally relevant, written just for me. The words of a song, a message given in church. Words of other Christians help too. And slowly I began to recognise that impression, those thoughts, which were not me, and I realised I was hearing from God. God was very patient with this slow learner. My relationship with him deepened, and so did my trust. Prayer, of course, was essential in enabling this friendship and trust to grow. Talking to God, and much more importantly, trying to listen, certainly helped me to trust. But it was, and I'm afraid it still is, a huge challenge sometimes. I find it easier to trust for myself than trusting him for my children. Until one day, I was so worried and afraid for them, I literally cried before God. And I realised that however much I loved the children, God loved them so much more. I could therefore trust him with their lives and situations, and I tried to do so. Occasionally, not yet Christian friends who know of some trials I've faced in my life ask, "Well, why does God let that happen to you? Still trust him now?" It is hard to explain when a heartfelt prayer seems to be ignored. Times when I didn't understand, was hurt and confused, but I know that going through those times without God would have been impossible, as he still made a way. It is hard to trust God in the darkest times, such as bereavement, unemployment or illness, for example. But we have the comfort of knowing that God is with us, and still faithful and trustworthy, even when we don't know how it will end. Those are the times when it's good to be deep-rooted, as Jeremiah says in chapter 17, verses 7 to 8. He reminds us that blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. He will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It doesn't fear when the heat comes. Grafted into the water of God and grafted into his vine. Trust and obedience seem to go together, as an old chorus says. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. Again, easier to say but hard to apply. However, when I try to do what God requires, I can feel more confident in trusting the outcome to him. Sometimes it is very hard to be obedient to God's teaching and promptings, but it does build trust. In our lives, I believe our steps are planned, and even when we can't see or understand the direction our lives are taking, he is working behind the scenes to direct us in the way that he wants us to go. I just love this quote from Christian writer Philip Yancey. "I've learned that faith means trusting in advance what will only make sense in reverse." That was true of Ruth, wasn't it? And probably of many of us. The Apostle Paul, in Romans 8, verse 28, says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Paul could say that from experience, as we know from our extensive studies in Acts. In Philippians 1 verse 21, Paul does not know the outcome when he bravely says, For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Again, he puts his trust in God with his life. Is trusting God easy then when we can't see the end of the story? No. It takes time for us to learn the power of trusting God day by day with each situation arising. I'm helped by banking situations in which I've trusted him and recorded the outcome. When my trust feels weak, I go to the bank. It's a notebook where I've written how God has worked in the past, which gives me more confidence to trust in the current situation. One such notebook, recently given to me by a friend, has this on the front cover. I trust the next chapter because I know the author. I trust the next chapter because I know the author. That's so good. We don't know the next chapter in our lives, but our trust is in God, who does and holds our future, and he knows the end of the story. Psalm 9 verse 10 says, and I try to echo David's words, those who know your name will trust in you. For you, Lord, will never forsake those who seek you. Even though sometimes it is still hard, I choose to try and trust. May we pray. You are a good, good Father, God, and I thank you that you have our best interests at heart. Forgive us, please, when we find trusting difficult, although we know you're working for us, even when we can't see it. May we truly try to trust you with all our hearts and not lean on our own understanding, and know that when we can't see before us, you still reign and you're still God.